Based on the last chapter, it seems that some Mausoleum Knights are waiting for Godwyn's resurrection. The main task of the Mausoleum Knights is to protect the wandering mausoleums, which is why the Mausoleum Knights can usually be found among them. However, there's one Mausoleum Knight to whom this does not apply. A single Mausoleum Knight with a sword surrounded by the golden flame of Godwyn stands directly in front of the Black Knife catacombs and gives the impression of guarding it. I think it's these little details that are sometimes crucial to understanding what's behind the story of Elden Ring. I think that we should draw important conclusions from these small details. In addition to the Mausoleum Knight, there is a Black Knife assassin inside of the Black Knife catacombs. Since the Mausoleum Knight is guarding the catacombs, it seems as if they are even allied. On one side we have the Black Knife assassins who murdered Godwyn in the Night of the Black Knives, and on the other, the Mausoleum Knights, who are waiting for Godwyn's resurrection. How does this fit together, and what is the relationship between the Black Knife assassins and the Mausoleum Knights? It makes sense to start by looking at what happened in the Night of the Black Knives. Roger is the one who tells us the most about this event.
It happened during the golden age of the Erd Tree, long before the shattering of the Elden Ring. Someone stole a fragment of the Rune of Death from Malekith, the Black Blade, and on a bitter night murdered Godwyn the Golden. That was the first recorded death of a demigod in all history, and it became the catalyst. Soon, the Elden Ring was smashed, and thus sprang forth the war known as the Shattering. I once wished to become a scholar, you see. I've spent many an hour scouring the archives for knowledge of that fateful plot. The world has grown crooked, and if you intend to put it to rights, you'd better understand what happened to make it this way.
The Night of the Black Knives was probably the most significant event in the context of our story, as it also led to the shattering of the Elden Ring and the war, the Shattering. Roger goes on to say,
You recall our conversation about the Night of the Black Knives, yes? They say the assassins who carried out the deed were scions of the Eternal City, a group entirely of women, arrayed in armor of silver under cloaks which fooled the eye. The knives they wielded, though, were imparted with the power of the Rune of Death through sinister rite. Please, I beg of you, lend me the knife print for a time. I'd love nothing more than to tease out its secrets. Though only a fragment, a very specific ritual had to be performed to impart the power of the Rune of Death. Traces of the one who performed the rite are sure to remain in the imprint. Now I have a fairly good idea who performed the rite upon the blade. The person who orchestrated the Night of the Black Knives. Lunar Princess Ranni, one of the children born to King Consort Radagon and his first wife, Rennala, demigod and sister to General Radahn and Praetor Rykard. Hers was the name I discovered in the imprint.
After Roger tells us this and we confront Ranni with this information, she tells us the following.
Indeed, I am the witch Ranni. I stole a fragment of the Rune of Death and used it to forge the god-slaying black knives through fearsome rite. I did it all.
The statement, I did it all, sounds a little exaggerated. She certainly didn't do everything on her own. For example, it was the Black Knife assassins who carried out the deed. I think the world of Elden Ring harbors secrets that go deeper than some people think and leaves a lot unclear. In the moment when we lie to Ranni at our first meeting that we don't have a spectral steed named Torrent, she says the following.
Quite the stubborn one, aren't we? Wise in a way. The lands between are home to lies and cheats aplenty. Perhaps thine ample mistrust will be to thy benefit.
Elden Ring encourages us to be suspicious and try to look behind the intentions of some characters. Ranni, for example, certainly didn't act completely alone. In addition to the Black Knife assassins, another person played an important role. Ranni's brother Rykard was rewarded with the blasphemous claw on the night in question. Here it says, Blasphemous claw, a slab of rock engraved with traces of the Rune of Death. On the night of the dire plot, Ranni rewarded Praetor Rykard with these traces. Should the coming trespass one day transpire, they would serve as a last resort foil, allowing Rykard to challenge Malekith the Black Blade, the black beast of destined death. Ranni may have performed a ritual, imbuing the Black Knives with the power of the Rune of Death, and possibly taking a leading role in this night, but she definitely did not act alone. I think there's a lot more to the Night of the Black Knives that has remained hidden from us so far. What we know is that Ranni, Rykard, and the Black Knife assassins were part of the conspiracy. Let's take a closer look at the intentions of Ranni and Rykard. Ranni's motive becomes clear in the dialogue with her. She tells us the following about herself.
I was once an Empyrean of the demigods. Only I, Mikola, and Melina could claim that title. Each of us was chosen by our own two fingers as a candidate to succeed Queen Marika, to become the new god of the coming age. But I would not acquiesce to the two fingers. I stole the Rune of Death, slew mine own Empyrean flesh, casting it away. I would not be controlled by that thing. The two fingers and I have been cursing each other ever since.
As an Empyrean, she was to be Queen Marika's successor and thus arguably the coming vessel of the Elden Ring. The incantation Elden Stars says, "It is said that long ago the Greater Will sent a golden star bearing a beast into the lands between, which would later become the Elden Ring." So if the Elden Ring is the Elden Beast itself, then Marika is also the vessel of the Elden Beast, and Ranni should become her successor in this respect, the new vessel of the Elden Beast. The Fingerslayer blade says, "The hidden treasure of the eternal city of Nokron, a blade said to have been born of a corpse. This blood-drenched fetish is proof of the high treason committed by the eternal city and symbolizes its downfall. Cannot be wielded by those without a fate, but is said to be able to harm the Greater Will and its vassals." Here, the two fingers are referred to as vassals of the Greater Will. The remembrance of the Elden Beast states, "It was the vessel beast of the Greater Will and living incarnation of the concept of order." The Elden Beast is also considered a vassal of the Greater Will. As vassals of the Greater Will, the two fingers are apparently the ones who select a potential new vessel for the Elden Ring and therefore the Elden Beast. They use their manipulative abilities and even the creation of shadowbound beasts to ensure that the Empyreans do not rebel. Ranni wanted to defy her given fate dictated by her two fingers and escape the influence of the Greater Will and his vassals. To do this, it was apparently necessary to free herself from her body. Does it have to do with how demigods or Empyreans are created? Does it have to do with the properties of their bodies? In any case, we know that it is necessary to free oneself from one's body in order to escape the influence of the Greater Will. As Ranni said,
I stole the Rune of Death, slew mine own Empyrean flesh, casting it away. I would not be controlled by that thing.
Most people probably think that the term, "that thing," refers to the two fingers. However, I rather like the idea that she is alluding to the Elden Beast for whom she should serve as a new vessel. Both ideas are conceivable in my opinion. Ranni's brother Rykard apparently also had little regard for the Erdtree and the Greater Will. As allies in the Night of the Black Knives, Rykard and Ranni will have had similar motives, to resist the influence of the Greater Will and oppose it. This tendency became even stronger after he allowed himself to be devoured by the serpent. Not only his later title, Lord of Blasphemy, indicates his dislike for the Greater Will. In Taker's cameo, which depicts him in the time before being devoured by the serpent, it says, "When Rykard turned to heresy, taking by force became the rule. The gods themselves were no different after all." The Remembrance of the Blasphemous also states, "Rykard took the form of a giant serpent, that he might devour, grow, and live eternally." I understand the road of blasphemy is long and perilous. One cannot walk it unprepared to sin. Rykard's character is characterized above all by his rebellion against the Golden Order and the fact that he did not want to be controlled by it. In relation to the Knight of the Black Knives, Rykard's motive was therefore also to resist the greater will. Recusant Bernal, a later ally of Rykard, sums up this view.
O greater will, hear my voice. I am the recusant Bernal, inheritor of my brother's will, and you will fall to my blade. We refuse to become your pawns. Consider this fair warning.
The Nox, the inhabitants of the Eternal Cities, from which the Black Knife assassins also originate, had similar views towards the greater will. In the Nox Mirror Helm it is written, "One among the Eternal City's ritual implements. Worn by those committed to high treason, it wards off the intervention of the greater will and its vassal fingers." Interestingly, the Carrion family had connections to the Nox. Apart from Nox statues in the Church of Absolution and a portal in Ranni's Rise, which leads to the vicinity of the Eternal City of Noxtella, we find the sword Urumi in Caria Manor. Urumi. This weapon, made of extremely thin, flexible blades of metal, is wielded like a whip by Nightfolk warriors. We can select the appearance of a person from the Nightfolk in the character creator. The features of those known as Nightfolk. Few in number, they were said to bleed silver long ago. As these creatures have healthy legs, they are definitely not first or second generation Albinorics. We only see similar creatures with the same appearance in the Eternal Cities. There, mimic tiers transform into humanoid creatures that correspond exactly to the appearance of the Nightfolk. If the Nightfolk lived anywhere, it was definitely in the Eternal Cities. According to this, the Urumi in the Caria Manor points to a connection between the Carrion family and the Eternal Cities and the Nox. Ranni's war counselor E.G. also wears a helmet that is strongly reminiscent of the Nox Mirror Helm. E.G.'s Mirror Helm. Helm fashioned from a crystal-looking glass, said to have never left war counselor E.G.'s head. Worn by those committed to high treason, it wards off the intervention of the greater will and its vassal fingers. E.G. was afraid, terrified of his own treachery. It is also true that Ranni wants to usher in the Age of Stars, which the Nox long for. Every piece of the Nox armor sets contains the following lines. Long ago, the Nox invoked the ire of the greater will, and were banished deep underground. Now they live under a false night sky, in eternal anticipation of their liege, of the coming age of the stars and their lord of night. In the end of Ranni's quest, when we killed the Elden Beast, she says,
"To every living being and every living soul, now cometh the age of the stars. 1,000-year voyage under the wisdom of the moon. Here beginneth the chill night that encompasses all, reaching the great beyond. Into fear, doubt, and loneliness, as the path stretcheth into darkness."
In all endings, except the Friendly Flame ending, the Elden Ring is restored and another Elden Lord follows. In Ranni's ending, however, the goal is not only to free oneself from the influence of the greater will, but to free the entire lands between. It is the ultimate liberation from the greater will, in which the Elden Ring is not repaired, but vanishes along with Marika. The lines, "Here beginneth the chill night that encompasses all, reaching out the great beyond, into fear, doubt, and loneliness, as the path stretcheth into darkness," are not meant in a negative sense. They are about the absence of light, guidance, and manipulation by the greater will. Without the guidance of the greater will, the beings in the lands between are now on their own, but free from its influence, as Ranni and the Nox have longed for. All in all, we can say that the Carrion family, and Ranni in particular, are connected to the Nox in the Eternal Cities, and that Rykard, Ranni, and the Nox share the intention of freeing themselves from the influence of the greater will. know from Roger that the Black Knife assassins come from the Eternal Cities. The item description of the Black Knife armor states, "The assassins that carried out the deeds of the Night of the Black Knives were all women, and rumored to be Numen who had close ties with Marika herself." Additionally, Marika is also called Queen Eternal by the spirit at the Pilgrimage Church, which leads to the assumption that she not only had connections to the Black Knife assassins, but also to the Eternal Cities, from which the Black Knife assassins originate. Marika's escarcelle could also indicate a connection to the Eternal Cities, as it can be found at a waterfall on the edge of the Eternal City Nokron. Marika therefore has some kind of relationship with the Black Knife assassins and the Nox. There is now another person who has a connection to Marika and the Black Knife assassins, Melina. Melina was born at the foot of the Erdtree and was given a task by her mother.
I was born at the foot of the Erdtree, where Mother gave me my purpose.
This information suggests that Melina is a daughter of Marika. In relation to the Black Knife assassins, Melina's fighting style is very similar to the movements of the Black Knife assassins. Melina's blade is also very similar to the Black Knives, and they even share the same skill animation. These characteristics indicate some connection to the Black Knife assassins. In front of the office where we find Melina's blade, and which may have been one of Melina's places of residence in the past, we find the official's attire. It reads, "Surveillance, executions, gruesome rituals. The darkest duties drive the wheels of mankind." The fact that Melina may have been involved in gruesome rituals could be a further indication that she was also involved in the Night of the Black Knives. Melina was given a task by her mother in the past and therefore seems to be acting in her interests. If Marika and Melina were indeed involved in the Night of the Black Knives, then the question of motive arises. What were Marika's and Melina's intentions? Although Melina is the daughter of Queen Marika, she seems to have been operating out of the shadows in Lanedale. But why? In addition, Melina has noted positively that we would oppose the Golden Order.
Even if it does violate the Golden Order.
The fact that Melina acted out of secrecy in Lanedale and was looking for someone like us to oppose the Golden Order could indicate that she had already conspired against the Golden Order in the past. In the first chapter, we also established that the guidance of grace is given to those who have the potential to set the Erdtree on fire and thus resist the Golden Order. The moment we tell Enya about our plan to set the Erdtree on fire, we get the following reaction.
Heavens forbid. That is not the domain of mere men. The burning of the Erdtree is the first cardinal sin. And you say you seek the power of the Rune of Death too? The Rune of Death goes by two names. The other is Destined Death, the forbidden shadow plucked from the Golden Order upon its creation. Unleashing the rune now would be unthinkable. The fingers would never permit it, nor would the greater will.
Since the guidance of grace supports those who have the potential to set the Erdtree on fire, neither the two fingers nor the greater will are behind the guidance of grace. There are many details that suggest that it is Marika who is behind the guidance of grace. For example, Fire Knight Queeline implores Marika to grant him her blessing of grace.
Queen Marika, I implore thee, bestow thy grace.
There are even little references, like the rune arc and fortified manor, that can be associated with Marika, and at the same spot in Roundtable Hold, we find the golden shadow of grace. Since it is Marika who is behind the guidance of grace and who wants to burn the Erdtree, she obviously opposes the two fingers, the Golden Order, and the Greater Will. That she shattered the Elden Ring should be proof enough of this. Enya is telling us.
Queen Marika is the vessel of the Elden Ring, carrier of its vision. A god in truth.
But after the Elden Ring's shattering, she was imprisoned in the Erd Tree, a grim punishment for shattering the Order, despite her godhood. The fingers speak. Marika's trespass demanded a heavy sentence. But even in shackles, she remains a god and the vision's vessel.
In the Round Table Hold, two factions are actually facing each other. On the one hand, we have Marika, who is acting against the Two Fingers, the Golden Order, and the Greater Will. This is hinted at by the fact that she is the one behind the Guidance of Grace, which supports those who have the potential to fulfill the prophecy of setting the Erd Tree on fire. She also shattered the Elden Ring and inflicted a wound on the Elden Beast. Furthermore, Melina acts in the interests of Marika and supports us in setting the Erd Tree on fire. Melina positively noted that we would even violate the Golden Order. On the other hand, we have the Greater Will and its vassals, which include the Two Fingers and the Elden Beast. If you pay attention to the wording of the Two Fingers, they actually do not want us to replace the Golden Order, but to restore it.
Brave Tarnished, your great rune is a handsome shard of the Elden Ring. Seek another of its kind to become Elden Lord and restore the Golden Order.
The Two Fingers and the Greater Will try to influence, manipulate, and use the Tarnished to restore the Golden Order. Ranni is aware of this.
How long will it be, I wonder, before the Tarnished tire of obeisance to the Two Fingers?
The Greater Will and his vassals still stand by the Golden Order. If Rykard is to be assigned to one of the two factions, he would belong to the faction of the Greater Will and the Golden Order, since Marika refers to him as the Leal Hound of the Golden Order.
In Marika's own words, O Radigan, Leal Hound of the Golden Order.
In Marika's hammer, it says, the tool with which Queen Marika shattered the Elden Ring and Rykard attempted to repair it. The conflict between Marika and Rykard is still ongoing. While Marika seeks to overthrow the Golden Order and destroy the Elden Ring, Rykard seeks to repair the Elden Ring and restore the Golden Order. From a certain point in history, it was prophesied that the Erd Tree would burn. The prophets who prophesied the burning of the Erd Tree were banned by the Golden Order as a consequence. The Candle Tree Shield, which is considered a symbol of that very prophecy, was also banned. It is Corrin's story that makes it clear that the Guidance of Grace and the Golden Order are opposed to each other. After his banishment, Corrin refused to avert his prophecy that the Erd Tree would burn. In the course of time, he died and was resurrected by Marika and her Guidance of Grace because of his conviction. Apparently, he lost his memories in the process and was subsequently manipulated by the Two Fingers, swearing allegiance to the Golden Order. His loyalty to the Golden Order was the reason why Marika and the Guidance of Grace turned away from him. Judging by the wound on the Elden Beast, Marika's goal was probably to destroy it along with herself. At the end of our story, we learn from smithing master Hugh that this is in line with Marika's wishes.
Here's my masterpiece to slay a god. That's all I've lived for. And my promise to Queen Marika.
Roderika's dialogue complements Hugh's statement and makes it clear that the aim is to kill Marika.
Please, become Elden Lord. Hugh was always saying that you were a lord to him. So slay her with the weapons he smithed. Slay the god Marika, who cursed us all.
However, killing Marika is probably actually about destroying the Elden Beast. The moment we destroy the Elden Beast is when we receive the message, God slain. The shattering of the Elden Ring was no spontaneous reaction, as she has prepared and gave Melina and Hugh a task to help us destroying the Elden Beast. Since the Elden Beast was not to blame for the Night of the Black Knives, Marika's intention cannot be a reaction to the Night of the Black Knives. Marika did not act spontaneously. She deliberately prepared in advance to oppose the Elden Beast, possibly even before the Night of the Black Knives. According to this, Marika and Melina had intended to revolt against the Golden Order and thus against the Greater Will, long before the shattering of the Elden Ring. Marika and Melina had similar intentions to Ranni, Rykard and the Nox. Could Marika and Melina really have been involved in the Night of the Black Knives together with Ranni, Rykard and the Nox? Let's look at the connections between Ranni, Melina and Marika. Melina is in possession of Torrent and hands it over to us. Ranni has received the Spirit Calling Bell and the Lone Wolf Ashes from Torrent's former master, which she hands over to us. It seems as if the same person is behind the support of Ranni and Melina, Torrent's former master. Since Melina is acting in Marika's interest and has a close connection to her, we can assume that it is none other than Marika herself. The Lone Wolf Ashes, together with the statue in Farm Azula and Maliketh as Marika's shadowbound beast, could also indicate that it is Marika from whom we received the Spirit Calling Bell and the Lone Wolf Ashes. Marika is the one who made the preparations to support us through Ranni, Melina, Torrent and Hugh. The cooperation between Ranni and Marika only makes sense if the Night of the Black Knives was in Marika's interest. It must be Marika who is behind the Night of the Black Knives. Marika and Ranni both share connections to the Nox. Marika is opposing the Golden Order and wants to kill the Elden Beast. Ranni wants to free herself and the entire lands between from the influence of the Greater Will and usher in the Age of Stars. I would even go so far as to say that they had the same goal, the Age of Stars, liberation from the influence of the Greater Will. And this is the reason why Ranni holds Marika's head so unusually carefully, because Marika and Ranni were both working towards the same goal. Let us turn back to the events of the Night of the Black Knives. Ranni has given Rykard a task regarding the Night of the Black Knives and imbued the Black Knives with the power of the Rune of Death. The Black Knife assassins murdered Godwyn. Marika has connections to the Nox, the Black Knife assassins, and later entrusts the Spirit Calling Bell and Lone Wolf Ashes to Ranni. In addition, Marika and Ranni are united by their intention to overthrow the Golden Order. All of this points to Marika being involved in the Night of the Black Knives and apparently being the one ultimately behind it. Melina also seems to have some kind of connection to the Black Knife assassins. Here, too, we can assume that Marika is the one instructing Melina. They all share the same intention of opposing the Golden Order and thus the Greater Will. But how does Godwyn's assassination fit into the bigger picture? Now we come back to our first thought. The Mausoleum Night with Godwyn's flame guarding the Black Knife catacombs with a Black Knife assassin in it. In addition to the Black Knife assassins, the Mausoleum Knights also have a connection to the Nox. The Wandering Mausoleums have the architecture of the Eternal Cities and thus suggest a connection to the Nox. If the Black Knife assassins are even allied with the Mausoleum Knights, then one thing becomes clear. Godwyn's resurrection was part of Marika's plan. Let's take another look at the Chapel of Anticipation in comparison to the Wandering Mausoleums. The Wandering Mausoleums have a bell to summon the soul of the fallen demigod. In Stormvale, there is a bell in the church tower that may have had the same function, to summon the soul of Godwyn. The Wandering Mausoleums are constantly on the move to keep themselves off the ground and thus away from the power of the Rune of Death. The Chapel of Anticipation has no connection to the mainland, only a great abyss around it, which could also be a protection against the power of the Rune of Death. The Wandering Mausoleums are protected by the Headless Mausoleum Knights. By comparison, the entrance to the Chapel of Anticipation at the Four Belfries is guarded by Headless Trolls. To free Godwyn from the influence of the Greater Will by freeing him from his body was part of Marika's plan, as well as his resurrection in the Chapel of Anticipation. Marika cared for Godwyn. Torrent is the only one who recognizes us after our resurrection, and through whom Marika ensures that the Spirit Calling Bell and the Lone Wolf Ashes are passed to us. Together with Torrent, we fight the Elden Beast in the name of Marika. The Age of Stars ending is the one that Marika and Ranni long for, because in this ending, Marika is freed from her curse as a vessel, and the entire Lands Between is freed from the influence of the Greater Will. The prophecy is ultimately about Godwyn, who is to be resurrected in the Chapel of Anticipation and who opposes the Golden Order. Let's summarize. On the one hand, we have the Greater Will and his vassals, the Elden Beast and the Two Fingers, and Radagon, who represent the Golden Order and who want to restore it. On the other side, we have Marika, who opposes the Golden Order, the Elden Beast and the Greater Will. Together with the Black Knife Assassins, Rykard, Ranni, Melina and Godwyn, Marika has conspired against the Greater Will, and they all try to oppose him and his vassals. Freeing themselves from the bodies plays an important role in this. Both Ranni and Godwyn should free themselves from their bodies and thus escape the Greater Will's influence. Marika's plan involved Godwyn's soul to survive the Night of the Black Knives and him to be resurrected in the Chapel of Anticipation. It is also Marika who instructs Ranni, Melina, Torrent and Hugh to support us, the resurrected Godwyn, in our fight against the Golden Order and the Elden Beast to end what she began. It remains to be seen, however, how Godwyn survived the Night of the Black Knives.